President of Beaches Watch. For those of you who may not know about Beaches Watch, we are a citizens group that was formed 10 years ago. And our focus is educating citizens and involving citizens in the issues that affect our beaches communities. So tonight we are doing this program with this panel. It's the first of a two-part series about the St. Johns River. And tonight is focused on the proposed dredging. And we've got several great panelists that are going to speak, and then they'll each have 5 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to questions from the audience. But before we get started, I want to make a few announcements. I'd like to recognize some of the elected officials that we have with us today. We have Jackie Smith, who's with Andrew Crenshaw's office. We have Joseph Zimmerman, where are you? Oh, there you are, with Janet Atkins' office. We have Mayor Harriet Pruitt from the We have City Councilman, oh, there you are. Okay, we have City Councilman Scott Wiley. And we have Mayor Carolyn Woods from Atlantic Beach. Am I missing anybody? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right up front, and I didn't see you. I have Councilwoman Janelle Wilson from Jacksonville. Sorry about that. You need to sit in the back. I sit right in the back. Okay, so real quickly, I want to make a few announcements. I hope people picked up an agenda when you came in tonight. This agenda is something that you can take home with you. It's got information on the back with our elected officials' contact information for all 3 beach cities, as well as some of our other elected officials. So we hope that you'll use this information to, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. This is a great way to contact the people that you need to talk with. Also, just want to mention a few things. It's 2014, which means start of a new membership year for Beaches Watch, because our memberships run from January to December. So we have Eileen, who's our membership chair, sitting at the table back here. Memberships are $10 for individuals and $15 for families. And it's open to residents of Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach, and Jacksonville Beach. You can fill out a membership form back there, and we would love to have your support because your support helps us continue to do the things that we're doing in the community and doing these types of meetings. Also wanted to make you aware that February 17th is President's Day, so all the city government offices will be closed, but the City of Jax Beach will have City Council meeting that night. And City of Neptune Beach, their meeting is going to be Tuesday the 18th. So just be aware of that change. And then we've got information on here about the legislative session, the Florida legislative session. You know, we have a speaker from the Florida League of Cities. There's a lot of issues that are very important to our local municipalities that will have an effect on our beaches. And we really want to keep an eye on what's going on in Tallahassee. So there's several links there that we are sharing with you so that you can keep up with what's going on. And just want to let you know that our March 5th meeting will be here in the library, and it will be part 2 of the St. Johns River Issues meeting, and it will be focused on the proposed water withdrawals by Central Florida. But tonight we're going to focus on the dredging, the proposed dredging, and we've got 4 panelists tonight, so I want to introduce each of them real quickly to you. First we have Lisa Rinaman. She is the St. Johns Riverkeeper. And Lisa serves as the chief advocate and public voice for the St. Johns River. Responsibilities include holding regulatory agencies and those including the river accountable, identifying and advocating for solutions that will protect and restore the river, working with government entities, businesses, community leaders, and citizens to resolve problems that impact the river's health, and communicating with the media and the public to educate and raise awareness about important river-related issues. It's a lot of stuff. She's a very busy woman. Okay, and then next to her we have Nancy Rubin. Nancy is with JaxPort, and she's the Senior Director of Communications. Nancy joined JaxPort as Director of Communications in early 2007. and was promoted to her current position of Senior Director, Communications in October 2012. Nancy has more than 30 years of experience in the communications field, both as a journalist and public relations professional. In her current role, Nancy serves as the Port's primary spokesperson, acting as liaison with journalists, broadcasts, and publications from around the world. She also assists JaxPort leadership in communicating with its many other constituencies as a public agency, including citizens and their representatives, port tenants, and customers, as well as employees. And Nancy holds a Bachelor of Science degree in broadcast journalism with a minor in international relations from Boston University. Then we have Eric Summa, who is Chief of the Jacksonville District Environmental Branch, ensuring and overseeing federal compliance with all applicable environmental and cultural resource laws from Peninsular Florida to Puerto Rico. Mr. Summa has served the Corps in various capacities for 22 years and also spent time in the private sector. His current efforts involve developing solutions which preserve, promote, and protect the natural and cultural environment. And then, last but not least, is Dr. Quinton White. He is the Executive Director with the Marine Science Research Institute and Professor of Biology and Marine Science at Jacksonville University. Dr. White joined the faculty at Jacksonville University in 1976, having completed his PhD at the University of South Carolina at the Baruch Institute, sorry, I should have asked you that, for marine biology and coastal research. Dr. White has written numerous research and technical papers for reports and received grants and contracts to support marine research at JU, focusing on the St. Johns River and human impact to marine ecosystems. Currently, he is conducting research on manatees and king mackerel. The Marine Science Research Institute building is the first LEED certified gold building on the JU campus. So these are all our distinguished panelists for tonight. And what we're going to do is we're going to give each of them 5 minutes to talk about their organization's position on the proposed dredging. And then once they've all had an opportunity to speak, then we'll open the floor to the audience for questions, so that you guys can learn more about all sides of the issue. So we'll start, since you're sitting first seat, we'll let you start first. Okay. So we'll start with Lisa Rinaman.
Thank you.
All right, Lisa.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be here. And being the voice of the St. Johns River is a little harder tonight because I'm losing my voice. So I apologize if you can't hear me very well. But I'll try to project. If you have a problem, just wave your hand. I'll try some more. And if I can't talk anymore, I'll just turn it over to Nancy and we'll move forward.
Just tell me what you want to say.
I am happy to be with you tonight because this is an extremely important issue. I'm just about to celebrate my 2nd year as your St. Johns Riverkeeper. And the first meeting I had as Riverkeeper back in February 2012 was with JaxPort. The second meeting I had was with the Army Corps of Engineers. Just this morning, we had a 2-hour session going through all of these different issues and concerns, differences of opinions, and try to talk through these issues so we can all do our jobs. Our jobs are very different. Of course, our job is to protect the St. Johns River and make sure that we do everything moving forward to find solutions to make sure that we and future generations can continue to enjoy our beautiful river. I knew early on that this is a very complex project, and our river is a very complex system. It's very dynamic. It's anything but average. So to do the work and the due diligence needed to review this dredging proposal, I knew we needed a technical team of experts. Dr. Quinton White is on our technical team, as well as Dr. David Jaffe, who's in the room. Jaffe, if you can wave to everyone, he's been a great resource. Dr. Kevin Lodge, as well as Dr. Jeremy Stalker. And then there's some other gentlemen that helped us behind the scenes on different pieces of the project. And we're continuing to do that work. We're continuing to have these conversations to figure out if we can come up with solutions. We have not taken a position of opposition because we purely believe there's not enough information to make an informed decision. We believe that the study that's been produced by the Army Corps of Engineers, it uses models that underestimate the environmental impacts, and that the economics being used to justify the project are being overestimated, so everyone will look at the benefits and not pay attention to the harm that will be done to the St. Johns. And we don't believe the mitigation plan is adequate because the models aren't sensitive enough to truly understand what will happen to the St. John's. So we're concerned about those things being out of whack. We need to bring some balance to the equation. The studies, some of the studies that are being used, unfortunately, they are being touted as best science available, but if they don't have the sensitivity to pick up on these impacts that we know will happen, increased salinity in the St. John's, that increased salinity will have a negative impact to wetlands, to submerged grasses in the St. John's, and all that not only provide habitat to fisheries, and they also provide a water quality filter, so they help filter out the pollution that we currently are experiencing. This past year we had one of the most toxic green algae seasons on record. There were days we literally had to tell people to stay away from the St. John's River. And that's obviously something we don't want to do as a Riverkeeper organization, and we don't want our public to be denied access to the great river that it is. So a multitude of issues that we're continuing to work on. I'll let Quinn talk about some of the specifics, as well as I know our counterparts at the Corps and the JaxPort world. But thank you for coming tonight. I look forward to having the questions, the dialogue, this discussion, and thank you, Beaches Watch, for hosting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to echo a lot of what Lisa said and then add some other perspectives. First of all, thank you, Beaches Watch. I have come out here multiple times. You have all been extremely hospitable, attentive, respectful. It's been a fantastic conversation, and that's why I was excited to come out tonight and speak with my colleagues who are up here again. As Lisa mentioned, we were together this morning during a very fruitful, I thought, and respectful conversation about some of the issues and questions. Great conversation, and I expect this will be no different. So Lisa said, we all have different jobs to do. And while that's true, it's the way they say about nationalities or religions, creeds, races. The more time we spend together, the more I feel we're really all headed in the same way. We really all want the same thing. We want a better community. We want a healthy river system. We want a protected environment. We want opportunity. Okay? We want this community to be the best it can. We want to maximize the use of what we have here, whether it be our natural assets, whether it be our ports, our terminals, our waterways, whatever we have, we want the most out of it. And the port, I think I've talked to this group, other times about this. We have a chartered mission, and that is to grow jobs, to grow economic impact, to maximize the benefits of the assets that are entrusted to us. We also feel very strongly about protecting the river, which is the basis of our work. We couldn't have a thriving port. We couldn't be the basis of this region's economy without a healthy river. So again, the more time we spend talking about some of these issues, the more I feel personally that we're all headed the same way. The reason for pursuing a 47-foot channel is very simple. We looked at our businesses, the experts in the world have looked at our businesses, and the container business is the fastest growing, biggest opportunity for us moving well into the future. If anybody is interested after the meeting, I have charts and diagrams. If you look at the chart of our business, which I don't care for myself, and I'm sure you don't either, but if you look at the chart of our container business, it's going like this for a long time to come. And the rest are moving along nicely, but they're down here, and containers are up here. It is just the way of the industry. And so our mission, again, is to do what? Is to make sure we're maximizing the use of our public assets to bring good to this community and to this region, to the state and to the nation. You'll hear from my colleague Summa from the Corps. When they look at this project, they're looking for the good to the nation. So we have to think a little bit bigger than Jacksonville as well. We say to the Corps, our industry experts, our projections, our predictions are that in order to stay competitive in this container business, which is our best opportunity for growth, is to be deeper, deep enough to accommodate the world's larger ships. Currently, we have the larger ships calling on us already. They're coming through the Suez Canal, and they're coming lightly loaded. What that means is the cargo is taken off somewhere else that would create jobs and opportunity here. So we have a portion of that, but we haven't maximized it. So that is what we're seeking to do. And again, the same as my colleagues up here, we're doing this not for me. You heard I've been in this business 30 years, right? So the future, we're doing it for the young people in the room. We're doing it for our children, our grandchildren, and the future of the community. So as we're pursuing this project, we say to the Corps, they are the nation's experts on waterway projects. This is their job to do on behalf of the nation. Find your best brains, get them together, find your best science, get it together, and do the best job you can of helping us balance protection of our natural resources and maximization of what we have at the port, what we can do for the community as far as economics are concerned. So I'm willing to talk facts and figures, but I think tonight we're focusing on the health of the river and this project. And again, I thank everybody for their interest. I thank my colleagues up here for always being willing to discuss and speak and participate. So thank you.
Stand. I'm going to walk around a little bit because I walk when I talk, so please excuse me. But thank you guys very much for having me tonight. I'm Eric Summa. I work for the Corps of Engineers, and I run the environmental program for the Corps. So when I see Dr. Jaffe in the room, an economist, makes me nervous because I can't answer all those questions. But I'm going to try very hard to address any questions you guys have here tonight. When I contacted Ms. Golding and asked her if it was okay to come here, she was very gracious and said yes. And the reason why is because, I work for you guys, and you guys are the taxpayers, you guys pay my salary and the salary of all our staff. And, the message that I have here is just to help better inform you about what's going on. Congress, approximately, I guess, 3+ years ago, told us, hey, we're interested in understanding better how port expansion works and what effect it might have on the economy and the environment. And so Congress said, go work with JaxPort and do a study and tell us what the answer is. And so that's the Corps' role right now. We're in the study period. We're not pro-deepening or pro-project. We're not anti-project, anti-deepening. We are very pro-study. We're trying very hard to find out, is it a good idea? Is it right for the economy? Is it right for the environment? So we're towards the conclusion of that study period. It's been going on for a little 3+ years. We've had multiple public meetings. I hope you guys have participated in some of that. But in short, the study is on its way. It's actually in our Atlanta headquarters and under review there and shortly up in D.C. The study recommends right now a deepening project of 47 feet. Take the existing river depth to 47 feet from 42, and that would cost approximately $695 million to do that project. That would be cost shared between the federal government and the local and the non-federal sponsor, JaxPort. Roughly the way the ratio works is approximately 50-50. It's a little bit different than 50-50. I can get into details whenever you want. But that's the cost. And for that, you as taxpayers get transportation savings. As Ms. Rubin stated, right now it's about containers. You might have seen pictures of these large ships with these long boxes on them. And those boxes come in from different places, but mostly Asia today. And there's a lot of stuff in there that we all use and buy, right? And so there is a savings that has been found through the engineering economic analysis of deepening the channel to accommodate larger vessels that can accommodate more of these cargo boxes. And that savings basically gets passed down to you as a citizen, as a taxpayer, as a consumer. So I'm saying that because your money will be partial, your money has been invested in the study. If this project gets authorized by Congress and they are the ultimate deciders of whether or not this project gets through, your money would go to pay for it. And so what the report says is that for every dollar that the U.S. taxpayer spends, and that's not only folks who live here on the beach, folks in town, but the folks in Georgia and Alabama and elsewhere, for every dollar that's spent, $2.64 comes back to the taxpayer. So that's in part what the report says. The report also spends a lot of time talking about the effect of the project on the river itself, and it's very, very important to us. We all live on or near the river. We recreate on the river, and we're very, very invested in making sure we're doing it right. We did use some very, very complicated models that are excellent, in my opinion, and verified by the National Academy of Sciences, the EPA, and others as the best cutting-edge tools available to examine the effects of these types of projects on the river. Those models told us with a very high degree of certainty that the project's not going to have a significant adverse effect on the river. Will it have an effect? Yes, it will have an effect. The effect is measurable, it's measurable, but it's very, very small. And I can talk to you about the scale of the effect as we go forward. We recognize that it's an effect, albeit small, and we publish that in the report as well. So the report says that, and it goes into extensive detail about how we came to that conclusion. And Ms. Rinaman, Dr. White, Dr. Jaffe, and many others have provided a lot of input to that to ensure that that report is as good as it can be. And honestly, without folks like Ms. Rinaman, Dr. White, Dr. Jaffe, it wouldn't be as good as it is. They work really hard as advocates for the river. They challenge us to be better, and I would appreciate it. So, so that's the high level kind of details. 695, 2.64 cost benefit ratio, small but discernible impacts on the aquatic ecosystem. There is a monitoring and mitigation plans associated with those impacts. So, as we said, we're using these complicated models to figure out what might happen to the rivers as a result of the deepening. All that's based on data that we have to grab from the past and kind of predict what might happen in the future. The mitigation monitoring proposal takes a look at the project as it's going on, uses real-time inputs of data as the project would go on and into the future to examine whether or not we were right, because the Corps and the government want to be held accountable for our decisions. We predicted a very, very small impact. We have a plan to make sure that we're right about that and to hold us accountable. And if we're wrong, we have a corrective action plan to set money aside to mitigate whatever error that we find. So that's our part to try to hold ourselves accountable to you. So I've used up probably more than 5 minutes, but happy to hear your questions, and thank you very much for that.
Sound like a professor who's got 5 minutes is tough.
We'll tell you got the 3.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. Let me just do a Harvard Deepening 101 real quick, because we have worked so much together, we sometimes don't step back and we think you guys understand everything. That's all right. We can bring it. That's a great break. The St. Johns River is a very unique ecosystem. Most of you realize it flows north. It's wholly contained within the state of Florida. It only drops 30 feet from its original origin until it finally gets to the mouth of the St. Johns at Maplewood. The last 200 miles basically are flat. I joke, it comes out of the mountains of Florida and comes roaring into Jacksonville. It's a very slow, meandering river. It used to be probably ranged from 6 to maybe 14 feet was the deepest back when Rubin came and discovered it. We've now, over the years, deepened it in a series of steps. It seems like every time, starting in the late 1800s, we deepen the river, we turn around, oh, we gotta get deeper, we gotta get deeper. There's always bigger ships, we gotta bring in more cargo, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. We have dramatically changed the St. Johns River in the last 100 years. Think back to the Panama Canal, built in the early 1900s, it's a little over 100 years old. The movement right now is to enlarge the Panama Canal. We talk about Panamax ships. These are the largest ships that can come through the St. Johns River. They have a depth of 40 feet. I think the length is about 600 feet long. They can come in and carry 4,000 or 5,000 what they call TEUs. These are the cargo boxes we're talking about. Well, the move right now and is being done, the Panama Canal is being deepened. And so we're going from a lock system that takes 40 feet to a lock system that will accommodate the ship 50 feet, much longer, much more cargo can come on the ship. So we have these what's referred to as post-Panamax ships. It's that piece of the cargo that we're trying to get. There are some of these ships built. They currently can come through the Suez Canal, and so they try to come into JaxPort as we're not going to, they can't come in fully loaded because we don't have enough depth. So what is being proposed is to deepen the river from 40 to 45 feet was the original from the core. Local JaxPort came in and said, no, we need 47. And so the Corps looked at it and said, okay, we'll go to 47. And so the study they've been doing is to look at the economic and environmental impact of a 47-foot channel. And I've said this many, many times. The wonderful thing about this country in America and the way we are is that we have had incredible conversations and dialogue with JaxPort and the Corps from the very, very beginning. JaxPort and the Corps have never denied the fact that there are environmental costs, and they've also talked about the economic benefit. And that's what we're trying to understand right now is what they are. The model they're talking about is a well-respected model, but all models are flawed. And our real concern about the particular model is predicting a very, very small change in salinity of the river. Now, when we look at the St. Johns River, we talk about full-strength seawater. We're talking something we call about 35 parts per thousand. That means it's 35 parts salt per 1,000 units of water. It's 3.5%. And what the Army Corps model is saying is that the Acosta Bridge, looking at everything, we're only going to get a 0.2 parts per thousand change in salinity on average. But over the last 100 years, as we've deepened the river, we've seen dramatic decreases in our fisheries, in our shrimping, in our crabbing. In Duval County, the submerged aquatic vegetation is all but gone because of a combination of dredging activities, growth in the state of Florida, reduction in water flow coming downstream, and next month we're going to talk about water withdrawal, because the river's so flat, anytime you reduce the amount of water coming into the estuary, then you're going to increase the salinity. It changes the ecology, changes the way the system works. Now, an estuary, and I've got a student sitting in the room, and she ought to go in unison when I say this. An estuary is a semi-enclosed body of water, open to the ocean, but diluted with fresh water. And so when you change that dilution factor, you change the ecology. And we've seen this again and again and again in the St. Johns River. The river today is not what it was when I got here in 1976. And I just said, we're the problem. We keep wanting things, we want bigger, we want better. Well, at some point we've got to step back and say, is this really going to be worth it? And this is where I start wondering about the economics of this, because we know that we need environmental damage. And I professionally disagree with the Corps' assessment. I don't think they're accurately predicting the environmental damage we're going to see. We've told them that repeatedly. They're using the same model that the Board of Management District used to look at the impact of water withdrawal. I disagreed with them too, and said, I don't think they're doing an accurate job of predicting what the impact is going to be. So, you know, we're not saying anything that I said before. And so we're looking at this system and saying, okay, is it really worth it to do this? Is the economics really going to pay off? And that's sort of where we are. So I hope we can have a conversation about what some of these trade-offs are. You know, will we in fact see the true benefit that everybody tells? Part of the problem with these large ships is as you carry more cargo on bigger ships, you actually have fewer ships. You don't need as many ships. And right now, the Port of Norfolk, Hampton Roads, and New York can already accommodate post-Panamax ships. Miami, Savannah, Charleston are all vying to also be another port of call. And I'd start doing the math and think, I don't know, I'm not sure there's enough up there. I'm not an economist, I'll let them worry about that part of it. But that's sort of where we are with this whole issue. And the politics are hardball. If you've been following the water resource allocation order. You know, we're not in that allocation right now. And it's because Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, the rest of them are sort of, would like to keep us small. So if you follow the information about, for instance, we just deepened the mouth of the St. Johns River to 50 feet to accommodate aircraft carriers. I'll be honest, I never opposed that because the amount of dredging necessary to take that down to 50 feet had minimal impact on the St. Johns River. Probably immeasurable. It was right at the mouth. It's a very, very complex situation, and I applaud the port and for having conversations. Lisa has spent countless hours with particularly Eric talk about this, but looking forward to answering the question.
So let's open the floor to questions, and okay, we'll start with the bagpipe player in the back.
I want to apologize.
The song again.
I want to apologize about that. The missing party here is the St. Johns River Water Management District. They have allowed huge companies like Coca-Cola and Nestle to draw down the Florida aquifer. And to make up for that loss of water in Central Florida, they proposed water withdrawal from the St. Johns, which reduces the flow. At the same time, they've authorized increased discharges from the paper plants and the chemical plants upriver from us. So they're reducing the flow and adding pollution. So whatever we do at this end of the river, dredging or not, isn't going to have the greatest impact. It's going to be what happens upriver from us.
Well, I'm going to disagree slightly. What you're saying is true. The river is so complex, and what you've got sort of competing with the Corps as they look at the dredging, and why the model becomes sort of questionable in my mind, is because you've also got this impact of water withdrawal. You also have the impact of sea level rise that we're seeing. And so you look at these sort of balancing things, it becomes very, very difficult to tease out what it is. And we'll talk about this next month when we get to about water withdrawal. I hate to say that it's not the big corporations that's the problem. The problem is you and I and our water consumption. Half the water we pull out of the Florida aquifer right now gets used on yards. You put drinking water out in your yard. And, you know, we've got this fixation with having St. Augustine grass, you know. And you guys maybe not so much at the beach as some of the folks who live more inland, but that's the root of the problem. You know, Pogo said it, you know, at the end, he needed us. You know, we buy the bottle of water, we consume it all, so we're the culprits.
Can I ask Quinton a question and then I'll what models would you use? You said this model is inadequate, doesn't give you the answers you need. What's better that's out there that we should use?
That's the problem. There is no great model. Models are almost always flawed. And so you run into this problem. And when you look at it and intuitively look at what the data says, it's like, you know, my experience tells me that when I look at this over the long haul, we're seeing dramatic changes in salinity. And so when the core model comes out and says only 0.2 parts per thousand, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're talking about going from 40 to 47 feet. And we had a great conversation today because I made the comment that's an 18% increase. Well, it's probably not, because when you do a cross section, it may be less than that. So we're continuing this dialogue. It's a dilemma. It is a hard dilemma. And nobody's ever said it's an easy question.
Right.
And Eric and his team have been diligent. And, you know, like I said, we've had great conversations about it. So.
Yes, sir, on the front row.
I'm new to this area, and this is my first meeting coming to Beach Watch meeting. But has there been much effort to have a scientific, more science-oriented organization do a study of the effects of the dredging on the river, rather than a construction-oriented agency doing the study?
Well, I don't see us as construction-oriented, but just to answer your question, our study that we do, nobody just takes our word on face value. We have to have multiple reviews by people that are not only within the organization but outside the organization. So the document that our staff prepared goes through, you know, Atlanta and headquarters, those are internal people. We also are required to send it out to other Corps of Engineers offices throughout the country that are experts in the same type of work to make sure they check our homework, but that's not enough. We actually hire an independent peer review company that they're called Battelle. They have connections with a lot of the science community and academic community. They have our report. They disseminate our report to these experts that we don't, you know, we're not in contact with, and they're asked to check our homework as well. So it's been checked at multiple levels by lots of different folks, and many of whom we don't control at all. And so we are having that scientific, rigorous scientific review of our work.
And I just want to add to that. I am privileged to work with as passionate people as I do up here. You should be very proud to have Lisa as your riverkeeper. Quinton watching the river since 1976, keeping his eyes on it closely. And Eric, and they are scientists, and these people are passionate about what they do. I don't understand some of it, but they are on the ball, on the, you know, their reputation individually and as a whole is on the line when they do a project of this magnitude. So there isn't much question I can find personally as a citizen here with you about the science that they work to do. I hear your question. They are scientists.
As a disclosure, I should probably say that I worked for many years for the U.S. Geological Survey in the water resources business.
So you're a scientist too.
I've got over 50 years experience in river
We'll get you a
development.
chair up here.
And I worked with the Corps and around the Corps for a long time. So I know your processes, and I've seen the results in many areas. And I would feel much more comfortable if there was some kind of independent study, not by an agency who has a dog in the hunt.
Right. We do have USGS, by the way, on our team.
I'm sorry?
We have your organization, USGS, Geological Survey. They're on our team.
Well, I know that that's not the only scientific organization.
I get you. Yeah,
But it seems now, it looks like there's going to be a reprieve in how the rush is going on to dredge all the harbors on the East Coast, based on the fact that one of the construction companies at the Panama Canal is going broke, and they're coming up a couple of $1 billion.
They will eventually
So,
complete those locks, though.
There will be time to take another look at this, maybe an independent type work, so that, you know, maybe we have a little more confidence in
And as a quick follow-up, we've asked for a copy of that independent peer review that they're referring to that they've done. We'd love for you to help us review the pieces you're interested in, and that's something to make sure we have eyes on it. There are some other federal agencies that still have concerns that are out. We've asked for all that correspondence to make sure these issues that are very closely aligned with ours are addressed. And there's issues, the National Academy of Sciences has outstanding issues and concerns about the validity of the models that they use. We want to make sure that those are addressed by the different agencies involved. So unfortunately, the timeline is not perfect because we're trying to get this study done in the Army Corps, and there's still critical review that's happening. And that's why we can slow things down and make sure all of these pieces are in place. Unfortunately, part of the problem was President Obama fast-tracked this study and shaved 14 months off of the study. And that's critical evaluation time, as you referenced, that we're not getting the benefit of here in Jacksonville with this Florida.
I will comment too. We need to go back to the gentleman who waved his hand. I want to comment. We had the same issues with the model that they used for the Water Management District for the water withdrawal. And because of that, the district did literally millions of dollars worth of scientific research on the St. Johns River. And the Corps has now done a lot of work too. And we're far better off than we were 10 years ago in understanding what's going on. And, you know, as scientists, there's never enough data. We always want more data. You know, and, you know, we're going to question things. And that's our role. And, you know, we talked this morning a little bit about this idea. We sort of a three-legged stool. And we got the Corps, the port, and then the Riverkeeper and our group, if you would, that are asking the questions. We're all doing our job. And it really is sort of fun if you like academic challenges. It gets a little frustrating when you're dealing with a killer, but other than that, let's go back to the back.
There have been comparable studies from other rivers that have already been dredged, like Savannah and Charleston, discovering other possible environmental impacts.
Maybe stand up.
Have there been any other comparable studies from rivers that have already been dredged, like Savannah and Charleston, discovering any other possible environmental impacts?
Yes, I can tell you that two studies. Savannah is ahead of us by about, I'd say about a year and a half, 2 years. Charleston is behind us by at least that much, maybe more. They're different rivers altogether. You know, Dr. White explained how unique the St. Johns River is. And the Savannah River going through the port of Savannah is a very unique river. That port is 18 miles upriver, whereas the JaxPort is 13 miles upriver. That river is much thinner. It's far smaller of a river than the St. Johns. So the impacts on each system is unique really to the system itself. But to answer your question further, I know a little bit about the Savannah River study. Because they were going up so far, 18 miles, and because the volume of water and volume of the river is so much less than the St. Johns, that project actually has got significantly, far more significant impacts than what we found in the St. Johns River. And you know, so much so that the mitigation proposal for that thing is $248 million to try to address the issues there. What they found was that they were going to have problems with dissolved oxygen. Oxygen is in the water column of all rivers, most rivers that are fairly healthy, and the dredging project in the Savannah River would deplete that, and so they have to address that by putting bubblers in the water, much like a fish tank, in order to aerate the Savannah River. There's multiple other things that they're doing to try to address those impacts, but again, it's very, very unique to that river, and because the length was so much larger, it made such a huge effect. Originally, the JaxPort study that we did contemplated going to river mile 20 and depth of 50 feet. When we looked at that originally, we saw significant impacts to the St. Johns River, which were not pleasing to anybody. And what we looked at was, you know, can we get the same benefits by scaling back the project? We scaled it back to river mile 13 and 45 feet originally and 47 feet at the request of the port. And that significantly reduced the impact. In fact, what we learned was it's more dredging length, how far you go upriver in terms of river mile, than it is depth.
I think that, Sandy, you're going to be the...
I have a slightly different take. I'm not a scientist. I'm just an economist. That's not the same thing. But I do read the business press, and I do keep abreast of political news. Here is my take on the story of port expansion. President Obama had a stimulus plan. He didn't think it was adequate. He wanted to add to it. He was getting nowhere with the Republican Congress on a new stimulus plan until someone came up with the idea of port expansion. The Republicans went along with this because this is pro-business activity. So the way it was set up, the U.S. is incidentally the only major industrial nation that doesn't have a central agency to plan and measure traffic and where the traffic is going and where it might be better to go. So it was set up as just, okay, here's the pot of money. And every port on the East Coast, including ones in Texas, jumped in with their Associated Corps of Engineers just to get a chunk of that big fat public money pie. And the literature I have read points out several things that says the whole East Coast port system might not get any more traffic out of the canal. First of all, because up to 80% of what we got over the last decade or so from the Far East came by rail from Long Beach or the the port of Los Angeles, by rail, straight across the country. They are spending billions of dollars as we speak to fix and modernize to the nth degree their intermodal facilities with freight, to expand the ports, to further mechanize the ports, so that they can compete head-to-head with all the East Coast ports. They don't want the ships passing by their big ports, and there's a good chance that they can compete successfully. This is what the experts say. Anyhow, the other thing is, contrary to a lot of what we hear, there really hasn't been much growth in container traffic at all, and the shipping companies are losing money right and left. And this includes all but the two biggest, one of which is Small American. So their plans have kind of gone astray. But the idea that all ports are going to provide equal benefit to the U.S. by expanding is beyond belief. A lot of experts think the ports that are successful right now on the East Coast are the ones that will gain the most from any future traffic that might develop. And that certainly leaves JaxPort out of the picture. We can talk about Savannah, he was just mentioning that. Savannah came from nowhere, and it's one of the busiest ports in the country now.
Exactly.
We've got Miami coming on board, we've got the Virginia ports, and others. So JaxPort's position is sort of the last horse to leave the gate. And that does not bode well for the future expansion of traffic in JaxPort. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give you some more details. Thank you very much for all that. So you are talking only about the Panama Canal, so let's expand your horizons a little bit there too. So we are seeing much more traffic coming through the Suez Canal. And there is manufacturing that is moving to that part of the world that is moving those that traffic through to the East Coast. Whether the West Coast is building their infrastructure up or not, whether we've already seen Tennessee being converted from the West Coast, consumption is on the increase. It's a 3 to 6% increase in container traffic to this country, projected out according to our exports, according to the numbers that I read. Besides that, the southeastern United States and the increase in the population in Florida alone, are we yet the third largest, most populous state? If it didn't happen yesterday, it's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, so we're right there. Miami, yes, Miami is way ahead of us. They are deepening a very small part of their port area, their harbor, and they will be a complement to what we have here at JaxPort. They will feed Miami, they will serve the central part of the state coming up from Miami, but let's face it, time on a ship is much less expensive than moving a container from South Florida all the way up the peninsula, up to wherever it's going, whether it be Chicago, Miami, Chicago, Detroit, Texas, wherever it's going from Jacksonville. Also, location and geography is very much in our favor, sir. You didn't mention the time that shippers save by coming to a port that is the most westerly port on the East Coast, that is the closest entry point to all of those points going in. Now, whether the recession, the slowdown, the economies of scale for the shippers have affected their businesses, I agree with you there. I read the same reports you do. But we have not stopped consuming goods in this nation. I'll throw out another point. Aren't we in a phase of bringing manufacturing back to this country? How are we going to send that stuff anywhere if we don't have strong ports everywhere that are able to accommodate the larger ships, which is where it's going to be? And if we are not in that container competitive market, then we are going to lose. There is an opportunity cost of not being competitive in the container trade. And we are looking at a horizon, we're talking 2035 in these numbers. These are long-term projects. So thank you, and we can continue this conversation, sir. I would love to. There's lots of other people that want to.
I'd like to offer a comment, but I have a very different perspective. I'm a retired professional sailing tugboat captain. I own a maritime school here, and And I have to acknowledge, sort of for complete understanding, JaxPort is considering donating land for schooner that we're going to be bringing into Jacksonville. But I'd like to point out three things that's not being talked about for some reason. One is directed towards Eric. I'm aghast that we don't have a national program of deciding what port should be deep port and what port should be short sea shipping. The second thing is nobody's talking about shipping that's going to be coming around the north. Y'all are talking about the Suez Canal, y'all are talking about the Panama Canal, but I can get deeper ships every day of the week through the Arctic. Another thing, as far as the St. Johns River goes, versus Savannah, for example, if you try and bring a Panamax ship up the Savannah River, you have to stop downtown traffic. There's not enough room for both. If you want to bring a Panamax ship into the port of Miami, you have to close the port to do it. We don't have to do those things. Now, we have some opportunities here. We have some good financial opportunities. We have some risks. One of the things that I'm very concerned about, for example, is one of my beliefs, I'm not a scientist, just a tugboat captain, is that the hydraulics of the dredging and the river flow is going to wipe out the Little Jays Park. I don't like that. I think that that's going to happen. I put money on that one, actually. I would love to see somebody else in this room. And I really, my comment is, why don't we have some sort of state and national presence to decide, okay, you're deep water, you're short sea shipping, you're this, we're going to take the containers off the road. Eric, I'm going to direct that at you. You're the federal representative here.
Yeah, I can say that there's no port czar or one entity who's responsible for deciding that exact question that you're posing. I think the closest entity would be the Department of Commerce, might be the closest entity to actually address that particular question. But it's a common thing that that we hear a lot. When we're doing our economics, we're doing an economic analysis, and I'm going to step out on a limb a little bit. But we're doing a region-wide analysis to capture a large area that does overlap with other ports and does overlap with Savannah and some of the ports to the south. So we are considering the impacts of those other ports as we're doing our analysis. But there is no central entity that says you're going to be deeper and you're going to be shallower. That does not exist in the federal government.
Can I clarify? The economic studies that the Corps does only looks at transportation cost savings.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, so the bridges there, the Corps does not verify any of the job numbers. It's been so highly debated in this community.
I'm aware of that, yes. My complaint is that chair needs to be sitting up there because that's the chair that really should be driving.
You're talking about a national freight policy, which
is
is something to be
discussed.
Well, the state is actually doing an improved job of having conversations about which ports and allocation of state money and which projects and prioritizing that way. So I will defend the state of Florida and the FDOT in that. Much improved over the last 7 years.
The other question I have is, how are we looking at the dredging of the river with respect to the potential of an LNG terminal development?
Two really different subjects, both associated with positive economic growth for the region. The LNG terminal currently, or any of these LNG conversations that are being had, twofold. One is the ships and the shippers are going towards cleaner fuel alternatives. They are being required by law to reduce their emissions, and I think the window of opportunity is closing for them to reach these cleaner emission goals of the nation, and so they are finding alternatives. And one of the alternatives is investing millions of dollars in new ships that run on LNG. So they need fuel. And LNG is liquefied natural gas. I'm sorry. Anyway, they are investing in new ships. Well, they like to bring their cargo where they fuel their ships. They like to fuel their ships where they bring their cargo. So it's a huge opportunity for Jacksonville. We have two Jacksonville-based shippers who are going to take delivery of LNG-powered ships in the next few years. So, and then we are looking at export opportunities surrounding LNG into the Caribbean, etc. But it does not have a depth question at this time, because those would go in containers on some of the smaller ships. This is not the big container ships that we're talking about coming, you know, from Asia or from other parts of the world. Did that answer your question, Bob?
Yes,
I hope.
Quick comment too, just, you mentioned Little Jenny's Park, because part of that is going to go away. But that's for another project that's called the Mile Point Project. It's not part of this project. And one, to be honest, that if you're not aware, the Intracoastal Waterways was a man-made canal. Actually, it was a toll canal back in the 1920s. Yeah, they had a chain across the Intercoastal, and we paid a toll for it to get through. Heckscher Drive was a toll road built by August Heckscher to get people out to Pilot Town, which doesn't exist anymore. But the Mile Point project is a positive project. It wasn't done by the Corps, but the Corps had to come in and correct the way that whole thing was designed, and it created what we call, I refer to as a nozzle effect, so that the flushing of water along the intercoastal with the tide would cause a ship to come in to be pushed one way on the front and another way on the back, and you haven't heard any of us talk about that being a negative problem. That's a positive thing, and will increase shipping activity in Jacksonville. So just clarify on that. There are a lot of things going on.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay, this lady here.
I have a question for Mr. Summa, follow up to the comment about the Savannah River problem. Was there a Corps of Engineers environmental impact report done before all that work was done? That could have and why, if so, why didn't it predict it? Because that's, you know, a big pointer.
Yeah, they have the same type of study procedures that we have, so they do have the same similar environmental impact statement that's directly, direct for their particular river. They haven't actually done the work, so I don't want to mislead anybody. Congress has got to pass the Water Resources Development Act in order for them to get congressional money to actually do the work, so it's not done at this time.
But I thought you said that the problem was because of a prior dredging project.
The proposed work would have those impacts that I described. It's not done yet.
Okay.
Yeah, they discovered
sorry,
those impacts in their study, and so they mitigated for those before they construct the project.
Okay, Tom?
My question relates to that, and Jackie may be the one that needs to answer this one.
Come on up here, Jackie.
But since we're not in the current water bill, and I understand that the cutoff for being considered in the water bill, the study had to be done by the end of last year.
They're still talking now.
So where does that leave us?
We're still talking.
They're still talking.
We're still in the game. Right, Eric?
Well, I would defer to you, honestly.
Sorry to throw you to the best.
I know the longer it goes on, the talking goes on until our study can be completed, the better for us, because it gives us a chance. Because that's the language they put in, if it went to, and then that just accelerates the conversation. Doesn't mean it's over, it just means you can go on with the conversation.
In our opinion, though, is the study truly complete? Because we don't agree that the due diligence has been done, and that's what our ongoing conversations are about. Unfortunately, the timetable does not serve, in our opinion, the science, the needs of the science, and the needs of the due diligence to protect the St. John's. It's not on our side, but we're pushing as hard as we can to get more detail, more information on the table, to get the unanswered questions answered.
Yeah. I would say that honestly, though the timetable was very short, very truncated, we lost 14 months. What we just did is we just threw more people at it. I would normally have just a few people on a study, but because of the truncated time frame, more than half the staff was fully dedicated, including myself, on making sure that the study got done and that it was right, it was done well. I feel confident that the study's complete, that it's got all the information in there to appropriately address the predicted impact. As Dr. White said, scientists always want more data. That's a truism, I can tell you. I work with them every day. There's never enough data to satisfy scientists. However, I feel very, very confident in the amount of work we've done thus far and what it's telling us.
And I learned something from Eric today that I think is important for everybody to understand. You just said scientists always want more data. the way that this project is designed and the system moving forward to monitor or watchdog or hold the Corps accountable will actually yield mountains of information for you to keep the river healthy in perpetuity and help you and help Quinton and help you and any other subject member that wants to know, or any other interested citizen. I thought that was something the Corps needs to trumpet themselves, but I'll do it for them.
But unfortunately, all of that information is not available to the public yet, and it's not amazing. The final document is done. And so we asked for a lot of documents as a result of our meeting, so folks that have your experience can dig into the details and get the questions they need.
Yeah, just for clarity, we've got a draft environmental impact assessment statement, and it is out there and it's available online for you to take a look at. But as we're going through our reviews with our vertical chain, what we call our headquarters folks, they're asking us to make modifications, none of which have affected the specific content. We have had to move around and make some changes to it as a result. However, we do have all the comments that we've collected from you members of the public, from Ms. Rinaman and many others. Those are all in the report now. Nobody's been able to see those yet until our headquarters tells us it's okay to release. And that we hope will happen probably at the end of next week, perhaps would be at the earliest time we can release it. We have a Civil Works Review Board of the headquarters folks take a look at it, tell us whether or not they feel like we've done our homework appropriately. Once they give us the check that you've done your homework appropriately, then we're allowed to release it to the public. So, you know, the earliest time would be, when is the review board date, you know, right on hand?
Yeah, 25th.
25th of this month, we would be the earliest time we'd be able to release it. More than likely, it'd probably be like a week or so after by the time we got all our ducks in a row.
So the end of
Is that the draft?
Pardon me, sir?
The draft?
That would be the final. That would be the final. Yes, sir.
Mick, in the back.
Hey, my name's Mick DeRocher. You know, we got such a good crowd up there up front, you know, the experts in all their fields. But, you know, when we first started this little discussion, it was like, well, the first person that led off was the Riverkeeper. Let's talk about the quality of the river. And quality of rivers is something that seemed to come about in my lifetime, back like in 1970 or something, when they said, hey, this river caught fire, and, you know, Pete Seeger's cleaning up the Hudson, and we have all this other stuff. And so there was these nasty rivers all over the country that needed to be cleaned up. The St. Johns River, we were lucky enough, I believe, to have that thing fed by these, appeared to be endless springs of crystal clear fresh water. So our river was like late in coming to be, you know, violated or whatever. And the headwaters was like a self-cleaning swamp down there, past Lake Helen Blazes at Blue Cypress Lake and the swamp there, the stick marsh. So, you know, by the time the water even starts coming down the river, it was pretty clean back then. So now we have a Riverkeeper. She's inherited the job from Neil, and they're saying like, hey, we're trying to clean up this water. We found phosphates. You know, we got the paper mill in Palatka that said, hey, can we pump a bunch more stuff into the middle of the river? We've got all these septic tanks that are still pumping in there. We have the Buckman treatment plant down there that sometimes stuff accidentally gets let loose. And Dr. Quinton, if he's been at JU, which, you know, it's a college on the banks of the St. Johns River, he doesn't even actually have to do any research. He could just walk out and look at the water. And from 1970-something to 2014, you can just physically see the water quality, the change in the life. Now, Nancy is, you know, she's a spokesperson for the port. So, you know, she knows everything about going on the port and all the charts. Everything's going up and up and up. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Now, these Panamax ships are going to come in, and somebody pointed out, I think it was Dr. White, that said, well, if they're going to carry more containers, maybe they'll replace more ships. So now we get maybe 500 container ships a year, and then when we switch over the Panamax, since they can hold so many containers, we only get 2. So the projected jobs is like, well, what about the jobs that we possibly lost by this new growth of these larger ships? So that's an unknown quantity. The Corps of Engineers, Nancy referred to them as the experts that we hire to do our job in the state and all the rest of the country. Now, it doesn't take, you know, since I've been around, I know the Corps of Engineers has made some mistakes. And we're talking about water quality. You know, I read the paper, and then down here, Lake Okeechobee, they have problems with the water that was in the lake, so they're shooting it out both ends, out the Caloosahatchee River and out the St. Lucie River into the Indian River Lagoon. And in the Indian River Lagoon, all these people that fish down there and everything, they're bitching about their water quality has changed. They have phosphates in there, the eelgrass is going away, the fishery's falling away. And somehow they kicked that up to the Corps of Engineers saying like, well, they let all this water out.
So, Mick, do you have a question?
Yeah, it just seems like we're getting lost on an unknown quantity of jobs. Like the big ships are going to maybe replace smaller ships. So really, what's the net result? Not the gross result, what's the net result? And then, one second, and then the Corps of Engineers said the change is only going to be 2%. Or 1%, 2%, whatever. That's the same as saying like, I'm going to bring in some nuclear waste, but you're only going to feel about 1/4%. And is that acceptable? We don't know. So the 2% factor, in a sense, is an unknown quantity. We're drawing water out of the south end, which is another topic we're supposed to come here. We're going to draw water out of the south end. We're going to deepen the port, so we're talking about salinity rushing in there. So we're going to slowly slow down the flow of the river.
So, yeah, so...
I think we need to, do we need to recreate on the river, or do we need to create the big buzzword, jobs? Jobs.
Both. We can do it all. We are smart enough in 2014 to say yes to all of it. A healthy river, jobs, the most benefit we can get out of our public port assets. I believe it, sir. I've been around these folks, I've been around these folks, I've been around citizens like you. We are smart enough to figure it out. We don't repeat the mistakes of the past. We learn from all of that, and we're going to move forward. The ships don't create the jobs, the cargo on the ships creates the jobs. The more cargo we touch at the Port of Jacksonville, going out and coming in, doesn't matter how many ships. The jobs are in touching each of those containers and creating the jobs through the supply chain. And I'm with you. We need to make sure all of that is happening, all at the same time.
There's a young gentleman in the back that's been holding this minute for a while.
Very, very patient. Thank
If I could make a jump back to the economical impacts real quick. You said that $695 million is the projected cost of the project. That's a pretty good chunk of change.
Yes.
And you said it's split equally between the federal government and the local government.
It's approximately, yes, but yes.
And local is non-federal, so it could be the state, could be the region. If you say local, it makes people think Jax Beach, so it's a little bit different.
Hasn't been defined yet where the local dollars are coming from.
Right. Okay, so how long do the experts or the models or whatever projections you have think it will take for the increase in shipping to be able to recoup $695 million?
Well, that's an excellent question.
Right.
That is a very good question, and I'm not an economist, I'm a biologist, and it's going to be very difficult for me. I don't actually have a good answer for you. I can tell you that the life of the project is a 50-year project, so when the economists are making their predictions, it's a 50-year time frame. It's not very prudent for us just to look out 5 years, of course, so it's a 50-year time frame. So I would say a minimum, and I'd like to get your name so I can get a hold of my economist, and we can actually contact you directly, because that's a very good question. I can give it to Ms. Golding as well for future discussions. But I would say over the course of the 50-year study, every dollar should equal $2.64 back to the taxpayer. Does it take 50 years, or is it much shorter? I'm not sure.
Okay. He's pointing out, I sort of stuck in at the end of what I said, that this is normally done in a business environment. Corporations making plans for the future with a cost-benefit analysis. Where is the cost-benefit analysis?
There is one in the report.
But it's based on transportation savings. It's not made on a local investment and what the return is with local jobs, which JaxPort's own economist says you cannot build it and they will come. That's an urban myth. That's his words. It only gives us the opportunity to aggressively compete.
and I agree totally. And what that means is, if we're not there, we don't have an opportunity to compete. I am with you wholeheartedly. When you look at getting a 47, when we deliver a 47-foot channel, we will need to, and we are, market aggressively, get into these places, be competitive in the business environment. We can't just say, oh look, it's 47 feet, let's go to lunch. There's a lot that has to go into building the business to bring all of that benefit here, but it's happening. You have passionate, hardworking, contributing people, not only at the port, but in businesses connected with the port, in businesses in distribution centers, in all kinds of businesses associated with growing the economic impact of our port and realizing, you know, the maximum benefits. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I appreciate your answer. I say to you, it's hard to imagine they have a focus. They look only at historical and current cargo numbers. That's all their process allows them to look. Our job, our chartered mission for all of you is to look down the street, around the corner, 20 years out, 30 years out, talk to our connections, look at industry trends, be connected to the business in a way the poor cannot because of their process.
And that's why that's why we have asked for an independent economic analysis, because right now the only job numbers for the local community that are being discussed are provided by JaxPort, an economist hired by JaxPort. There's not been a community, not the chamber, sorry John, not the chamber, not local government, not state government, that's independently verified those projections, and that needs to be done.
And we're open to that.
I would like to point out to the public here, they can go to the charter that's set up for JaxPort, and it was supposed to operate as a business and make a profit, and it has not done that. It's been a money loser, and will this additional investment make it profitable? That is impossible to tell.
We have made money, sir. It all goes directly back into our very expensive business to upkeep. So I'm not sure. We'll have to sit down and talk about the numbers with our financial people.
Okay,
let me get your part.
Yeah, this gentleman here has been waiting.
I just have a question. Is this a competition between the four cities that you mentioned, such that is Congress only going to fund one dredging project? Is the Army Corps of Engineers then at the end going to be tasked to say which of these four ports should get the money, or theoretically should put all four ports be dredged?
Yeah, it's really Congress's decision. I mean, we're giving them the results of the Jacksonville study. Savannah's got theirs. Charleston will not get there in time, I don't believe. But so it's really Congress, you know, the keepers of the purse that are going to decide which.
It could be more than just one city.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it could very well be.
This gentleman here.
Yes, so given that, question I've got is, so suppose this doesn't happen.
Which part?
The 47-foot channel does
not
not happen. I know you don't. And I actually think it's, frankly, I think it's almost done. But suppose it doesn't happen. Had there been economic studies or plans or contingencies made for this community and this region thriving without a 47-foot channel?
And let me answer the question. That's a great question. And I want you to feel comfortable with the answer. The answer is absolutely. We have short-term goals and we have long-term goals. All of them are built around eventually being... Well, the Port Authority, whose mission it is, whose job, whose responsibility it is.
But I think the question I'm asking is a broader question than just
other than the port.
I'm talking, does anybody look more broadly at the economic impact? Because part of what's happening with this is we're picking winners and losers when we talk about economic impact. Because we have commercial fishermen and recreational fishermen and people recreating on the river. We can't use that river, from what I understand, the way they've been able to use it in the past. And we have a history of, assaults on this river that are continuing. And this just seems to a lot of people like one more. And so, are we looking at alternative ways to drive an economy in this region that doesn't include the dredging of that port? And we may have to, because if it's true that somebody's going to get picked and somebody's not going to be picked, we darn well better have some contingencies, it seems to me.
Well, I understand your question, and I will say from our point of view, again, our mission is to maximize the benefits of the port.
Yep.
The community conversation around other areas that need to be economically supported and invested in and managed, and I understand you're asking, what are we losing to gain what we would gain?
Not necessarily asking that, but let me ask you very directly, then,
sure.
just from the port's perspective. Suppose you don't get your 47 feet. How are you going to thrive? What is your contingency plan?
Well, we're a very diverse port. Let me put that out there to you. We're about evenly split between imports and exports. We sit very nicely on, as the largest exporter of vehicles in the nation. We have a very thriving business in the vehicles. We take a look, though, at the businesses, and the one that's going to bring back the most opportunity currently is containers. We're not ignoring, nor we are investing and growing all of our lines of business. If we reach a crossroads, we have a nice base of business. The greatest bang for our buck is in this container trade and maximizing the use of the terminals we have, maximizing the location that we have, maximizing the labor situation, employing people well into the future. So I do understand your question. You can feel comfortable that all of our lines of businesses are being nurtured equally, but we still would like to maximize what we can offer based on what our charter job is to do. And again, I think we're smart enough in 2014 to figure all of this out.
We have a lot of, I know a lot of really good questions, and so we need to wrap up. So let's, the gentleman in the back.
I want to get back on the environment. We're going to dig all this bottom out. Call it. Where are we going to distribute the spoil? How are we going to deal with that spoil?
Sure. Okay. So there's multiple opportunities. The dredge material, there will be about 18 million cubic yards. That's an awful lot of material. What do you do with material? Traditionally, what has happened is material has been taken offshore. The EPA regulates a whole suite of regulations for offshore placement of dredge material. And right now, there is a place right off of Jacksonville Coast, about 7 miles offshore, where dredge material is being placed from the Navy Kings Bay project, Jacksonville, Rinaman, the operations and maintenance. So there's an existing one. Right now we are contemplating, we're actually working with EPA to look at making another site for another placement area for material that may come from this project. That's not our number one. That would be a place that we can place the material. But if there's any material that's good quality, sand material, which we expect to get at deeper depths, we're going to place that stuff on the beach if we can. We would like to beneficially use as much material as possible. I look at sand as a resource, and we need to think about it that way. And once we put it offshore, it becomes difficult to get back again. So first priority would be beneficial use. Last priority would be placement offshore.
The gentleman.
Yeah, can I just make an announcement? In the spirit of full disclosure, I've been working with Quinton and Lisa Rinaman, critically analyzing the port, the dredging project, etc. My name is David Jaffe. I'm a sociologist, not an economist, at the University of North Florida. If you're interested in this topic, I've been directing something called the Ports Project. If you just go into Google and type UNF Ports Project, it'll take you to a website. I've written several reports which address many of the questions that you have. These reports are about understanding the port economy generally in a global sense, and then how it impacts the local economy, and then more specifically, a report on the dredging project. So take a look at those resources, and if you have any questions, please contact me.
Sandy, could I ask you to put on your website some of the documents which would further explain the discussion today?
If you have a document summarizing mine too, with our website on it, so we have to pass pass those out.
If she could just put the links on there, that would be a wonderful thing.
Can I just mention something about the water withdrawal, because I think that's your next topic? Are you involved in, is that next month?
Yes.
Oh, you'll give me the date, so I'm listening. Just so you don't think that that's been ignored in the course process, Eric can tell you, well, you tell me.
Well, and Lisa can correct my numbers if I'm wrong, but I think we as consumers take about 800 million gallons a day out of St. John's River currently, and that's from north to south all the way down to Orlando. It's not that.
It's very small, very small.
Really? Okay, I'm sorry.
My only point was that you studied it.
What we did was we heard the water management, St. John's River Water Management is contemplating taking additional water out of the St. John's River. What we did is we took their estimates, we bumped them up a little bit just to be conservative, because we want to make sure we're conservative. And we did factor in 155 additional million gallons per day taken out of the St. John's River, and put that into the model to make sure that we're capturing that.
And we're hoping to take that out of the equation, so we don't have to worry about that. I want to thank Mayor Pruitt and the city council members at Neptune Beach for passing a resolution on Monday night opposed to the water withdrawals. If y'all want a sneak peek to that issue, tomorrow night at Jacksonville City Hall at 5 o'clock, the Water Management District is holding a workshop. And basically, they're recommending taking millions. There are 2 plants on the street that have more than 300 million gallons of water a day being proposed from the St. John's, and they're using a study that only looks at quantity. It doesn't look at the water quality impacts to say it's sustainable, and it's just not sustainable from a quantity or a quality perspective. So please join us next month on March the 5th. We'll have a panel, or come downtown tomorrow and join us. And our website, which we'll link on to y'all's website, will have more fact sheets on that issue as well. But a major concern, we feel like our river's getting it at both ends right now. We've got to stay together and stand up for the St. John's.
Lisa? The young lady in the back is the holder of hand, and we'll wrap up. That would be our last question.
Thanks. Going back to the environmental factors, you talked about that there was going to be a 0.2 parts per thousand increase in salinity.
Yes.
And you said that you had dredged the St. John River by small increases or decreases in the past. What was the change in salinity when you decreased it in the past?
Okay, so the St. John's River has been modified since as early as, it's been modified for more than 100 years.
1880s.
The most significant dredging events came forth in the early 50s, and then subsequently up through the 70s. And the last time we did a deepening event was in 2004, I want to say, approximately.
The last part of it was finished in 2010, but that was the last 5 miles. I'm not exactly sure. I wasn't at the port then, but it was before 2007.
Yeah, 2010 was the last that's how I read.
Yeah. So the river has been changing all along, just as Dr. Ryan and Ms. Rinaman have said. We don't actually know what the answer is as to how much it changed in 1953 when the Fulton Cutoff was constructed. We don't know how much it changed. We don't really know how much it changed in 1978 when we had a deepening event down to mile 20. The fact is we just weren't smart enough back then. We weren't watching the river like we are today. And we weren't required to do the analysis that we currently are required to do today. So I wish I could tell you how much the river has changed significantly, and it is due to a lot of different factors, us included. But I can't tell you about the extent of the change that's happened from past actions.
But you did say that the changes in the past did cause fish in the area to become more scarce. I remember one of you mentioning that earlier. Once you get past 35 parts per thousand, it does become harder for fish to live in the area. So my question is, if we do add the 0.2 parts per thousand, I know that you said the charts aren't clear as to the environmental impact, but if it does make a greater degree of fish scarce, that will put pressure on some of our fisheries here locally, which even though the cargo coming in, that is an economic rise, that will also create more local businesses to, like I said, have pressure, which will affect our economy here despite the incoming cargo.
And if I can get your information after, I'll send you a letter from NOAA and their Essential Fish Habitat Division, and they have many outstanding concerns that are very similar to yours, and we're still waiting to hear those issues being resolved, so I'd be happy to send you that letter for your review. And that's a very good question that multiple people have been asking along with this very interesting conversation.
A lot of really good questions tonight, but we do need to